Hello and welcome to Shoot the Gap on Fantasy and Frames. I'm your host, Justin Taylor. Tonight we're going to talk about IDP rookies, landing spots we like, some guys we don't like we're out on, and some guys you may want to stash on those taxi squads. Stick with us here on Fantasy and Frames. I want to welcome my guest in, SC Romero at the PPR show. A guy we've done a lot of shows together in the past. It's been a while, SC. Thanks for joining me. Pumped to talk about rookie IDP guys with you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yes, sir, man. I appreciate you having me on, and get excited when we talk about it. You and I were on a college show together, so we definitely been seeing some of these guys probably before. A lot of people knew their name when they got drafted. So I'm excited to talk about them, get some values in here, especially for these IDP community. That's a growing community, and I think this will very help them because IDP leagues are coming, man. If you're not in one, give it a couple years. You're gonna be in one soon.
Absolutely, dude. I've got some guys that told me, no way. Never going to play IDP. Never going to do it. They're in IDP leagues this year. They're in startups. They're starting to love it because they're like, man, I like these defensive players. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's awesome when you have your own guys' defense. So they're getting into it. I love it. Number one request for me is where do you rank these IDP guys? Where do you take them in your IDP drafts? Where's a good spot to take them? Obviously, every league's a little bit different. But we're going to get into that tonight. Where are we kind of taking these guys? I've done probably 5 or 6 IDP drafts so far this year. So we're going to talk a little bit about like where I'm taking guys, where I've seen them going. So let's just jump off right off the bat. Let's get into kind of the high-end guys. The guys we're seeing come off in the early rounds. It all depends on your league, like we said, because scoring is different on whether tackles are more important, sacks, turnovers, that type of thing. And then I always suggest this in any IDP show. You got to learn the room. You got to feel out all your league mates. Where are they taking guys? Because I have leagues where, hey, you want that top IDP guy, you got to give him in the end of the first round. And I'm in other leagues like no one touches IDP till the third round. It just happens. So you got to fill out your league because I was like, when's the ideal place to take this guy? It really depends on your league. So I know you're the same way. No IDP league is the same, which for me, I don't like you. That's why I love IDP. You can't just grab a sheet and go off the sheet and be like, oh, I'm going to take this guy, this spot, because it doesn't work that way in IDP. You got to have you got to be able to adjust. You got to be able to feel the draft, feel what's going on. I mean, I've seen guys go in second round and then get the same guy go in the fourth round in the very next draft. Right. You see the same thing, don't you?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like you hit it on the money. You gotta fill out your league and do it. I mean, if you believe in it, just like any player, if you believe in them, by all means, take them where you want to take them. To make sure you get them on your team. But I'm in one league that actually the scoring is super high. Like we're scoring 700 to 1,000 points a week, but it's because it's IDP and because that was the best way we could figure out how to balance it out. Where you have some IDP players in the top 10 of the fantasy scoring in that league. So that one's a way different one where IDP is going a little bit early, not as early as like your top 8 picks, but maybe someone will sneak in the back of the first there or so like that. So definitely just depends on what league setting you have and what you want to get into when it comes to IDP scoring. I mean, I think you definitely keep it minimal at first, get used to it. Don't go out crazy and try to make it as even as butts because it's hard to make it even. Like I said, you got to get high scoring in there, but it is a fun league because, you have defenses and your defensive lose points if they get blown out. But yeah, if you have IDP, someone could go off in that defense and they just couldn't keep it going. The cornerbacks were messing up, not the linebackers, So that's where IDP becomes fun because it's not based on one unit, it's based on individual players.
Yeah, I always tell guys when you ever start an IDP, I start at a set point and then I make adjustments as the league goes on and say, hey, this position is not scoring as much as this position. Let's figure out a way. How can we add some points? And I always tell people my number one home dynasty IDP league, the first one I ever started. That was my first ever dynasty. We jumped into dynasty, 2QB, IDP all together at once. No one had ever played in any kind of league like that. It's just a little over 10 years old now. But we got in there, and then slowly but surely, we raised the IDP scoring. We added more IDP starters because, we wanted to even things out. We didn't want it to be where, at the beginning it was guys just going on and pick up guys off of waivers every week. Because like, it's almost the same. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that in IDP. So the idea is, as a commissioner, and I'm the commissioner of the league, you got to make those adjustments to kind of keep it up. So now that we've talked about all that, we've got everything started. Let's get into these rookies. I've been doing a ton of drafts. I just literally finished one draft. I finished another one yesterday. I just finished another one 10 minutes ago. I had the last pick where I was trying to trade back in to the 5th round, trying to get some extra IDP guys I loved. I was giving up picks next year. Let's talk about kind of top guys off the board. I know who I've been taking and I've been seeing. Who are you seeing kind of the number 1 or number 2 guy coming off the board in your IDP leagues as far as rookies?
It's really been Turner or Latu. I think a lot of people are just heavy on them. You can't throw in Colson there, here and there. But I think those guys with the draft capital they got, being the first 2 defensive players off the board, a lot of people fluctuate to that, and they seem like they're primed to go in there and get a crazy amount of sacks. Right? You're not maybe gonna get your 100 tackles or anything, but in the realm of 60 tackles and 8 to 12 sacks, that I think that's possible for these 2 rookies coming in 4-year leagues. That could be big for them. Again, scoring matters. Colson should be able to go in there with the Chargers, going in there with his college head coach, and Harbaugh, should get some playing time as well. One guy that I am taking, though, if those 3 are gone, is Edgerin Cooper out of Green Bay. I think the Green Bay needed him. They drafted him in the 2nd round. He is just a phenomenal rusher. He knows how to get through the blockers. He knows how to get behind the line of scrimmage, but he also has great ball pursuit. He knows how to get after and get his tackles as well. So that's a guy I'm very excited about, and I think he starts day 1. So out of those 4, those are probably my top guys I'm taking early.
Yeah, depending on like sacks, tackles, I've been in a lot of leagues where I've needed linebackers, or I'm in leagues where there's no linebackers on the waiver wire. All the starters are taken up. So there I'm kind of maybe pushing up and taking guys early. So my number 1, I came into the season saying this. I'm actually a little surprised that everybody else has jumped on board, but Junior Colson's been my number 1 guy since the offseason. I loved who he was. I love what he did at Michigan. And then everything fell into place with him going to the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, as head coach, going to the Chargers. Him getting drafted in the 3rd round. Sometimes I've heard some people like, 3rd round, do they like him that much? To me, if you're a middle linebacker, an off-ball linebacker, and you're drafted a 2nd or 3rd round, that's basically the 1st or 2nd round these days. They just – because very few people are taking – inside off the ball linebackers in the 1st round. So I loved it. He's my guy. I've been taking him everywhere I can get him. So highest I've taken him, because people are asking me, where are you getting him? So in one of my leagues, I took him at 2.6. Now this is a salary cap league, so I'm locked into 4 years at a certain amount of money, and I knew he wasn't going to get to me at 3.6. So I probably slightly overdrafted him. There's a chance he probably would have went late 2nd, early 3rd. I just didn't want to miss out on him. I've got a nice linebacker core, but I needed another guy that was going to come in and play right away. And there wasn't a lot of guys on the waiver wire. So I overdrafted him a little bit there. I took him at 2.6. In another league that was only a 10-team league, I actually got him at 4.4. So, just depending on where you're at. And that's why I always like to tell people, feel out your league. I had to take him at 2.6 as the number 1 guy, and I had to take him at 4.4 as the number 1 guy in another league. So, but he's been my number 1 guy all around. I love him. If I can get Colson, I'm taking him. Anywhere I'm missing out on him, I'm kind of pissed about it because I like him so much. He just is a guy to me that feels like I was a big Bolton fan coming out of Missouri when he got drafted by the Chiefs. Colson reminds me of him. He's just that hard-nosed guy that makes tackles, is always getting in the mix. He's not sexy. He just is a good football player and makes plays. So I remember telling everybody I love Bolton coming out of Missouri. When he got picked in the second round by the Chiefs, I was like, sold. Like I gotta take him. He's a guy overdrafted just because I didn't want to miss out on him. And then everybody 2-3 years later is asking me, "Oh, how do you know how to take that? When to take that guy?" Like I didn't even know about him. I'm like, he's a beast.
Right.
And again, because me and you, we watch a lot of college football.
For
I
sure.
was on him before a lot of other guys. So I feel like that way about Colson. I just feel like he's got a good 10, 12-year career ahead of him. He's going to be solid for years. And
And,
he could not have landed in a better spot with the
right.
Chargers, correct?
Yeah, and they needed a linebacker. You know, they got rid of Murray. I'm pretty sure he's in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, they definitely need an inside guy there, and that's a plug and play player in the sense that Harbaugh already knows the type of athlete that he is. He coached him at Michigan, right? So he knows what he's getting there, and he knows what Harbaugh expects out of him, right? So I mean, I think it's just gonna be a beautiful scenery for him. He could maybe be in running to lead the AFC in tackles, the AFC West at least.
Yeah, and then you talked about Edgerin Cooper a little bit early on. He's the other guy. If I'm usually taking Colson, it's in my league because I love Colson.
Mhm.
But I've had other leagues where it goes Cooper then Colson. A lot of people loving Cooper. Obviously, he was the number one linebacker off the board in the draft in the second round. It feels like they're trying to make a little bit of a change at linebacker there. They let Campbell go. He's moved on to the Niners. Quay Walker, while being a productive fantasy IDP guy, has had some issues in the locker room. Some people talk about his PFF scores. They're
Mhm.
not great. It feels like this team is willing to maybe move on for him at some point. So taking Cooper in the second, and then my guy that we'll talk about a little bit later, Tyron Hooper, took him in the third. It makes
Mhm.
you feel like these guys are thinking about moving on. But Cooper, to me, is a guy I'm seeing right where I'm seeing Colson. He's going
Mhm.
second, late second, early third, mid third round. In other leagues, possibly, especially like my 10-team league, these guys drop to like maybe the fourth round. I feel like Cooper's right in that mix. I've seen him be the number one guy off the board. I've not
Mhm.
seen him go later than fourth off the board.
Yeah, he's definitely been one of the top IDP players. Again, this that velocity when he has that ball tracking, when he's going after it, he gets it, and I think that's gonna be a lot for him going into this season. And again, someone that's gonna be an impact player day one, just like Colson.
Let's talk about another linebacker I like. A guy that, people are like trying to figure out what they should do. Peyton Wilson, go to the Steelers. A guy who won every award you could win. Won the Buckus Award for top linebacker, won the Benerick Award for top defensive player in college. Then all of a sudden you get the medicals going into the NFL combine, and they're like, yeah, this guy doesn't have any ACLs. Well, everybody starts freaking out, just like last year with Tajay Spears. And people are like, oh, what do we do? What do we do with him? Ends up dropping to the third round to the Steelers. I felt like it was a great landing spot. They just got Patrick Queen, who's going to be, the stud in that middle there. I think Wilson has a nice shot here. Holcomb's coming off injury. I'm not sure he makes it back from that injury
Yeah.
to 100%. And then Alonzo Roberts, a guy I like, but he's a bull. He's a run in the line and make tackles type of
Mhm.
guy. Wilson is much more of an athletic guy. Can play pass coverage, can play in nickel, can play in dime. I
Right.
think I think he's going to end up winning that LB2 spot for the Steelers. I mean, if he can stay healthy, the athleticism is off the charts. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean you hit on money though. Patrick Queen is a linebacker you want. He's just expected to wear the green dot there and actually be the leader there. You still have TJ Watt, right? And Landon Roberts, and then Highsmith. Those are projected the starters right now. I think Holcomb's gonna be the biggest competition for him, just because I think Landon Roberts with his experience, as a veteran player, he's gonna be involved there. You have Payne Wilson, who is more athletic than him, so he might be used. I think those two will be more in rotation. But again, I think Cole Holcomb, depending on how he comes back, because that guy's a dog too. When he's on the field, he gets after it as well. So that will be the biggest roadblock for Payton Wilson to see some playing time, because if Holcomb comes back healthy and ready to go, then that's gonna be a problem, because it's gonna be hard for Payton Wilson just to get after it, because Holcomb's been on specialties, man. He's fought his way up to a starting role, and unfortunately he got hurt last season. So I think that's a big part in their defense, or what they want. They want that type of player. Wilson could be it. But right now it is Holcomb, and once he comes back healthy, it's gonna be a fun competition to watch there.
Yeah, all kinds of injuries in that linebacker core last year. So the Steelers wanted to get as many guys as they could in there
Right.
just in case. I'm seeing Wilson go everywhere from like late third to late fourth. Is that kind of where you're seeing him go in IDP drafts?
Yeah, yeah. He's probably the at linebacker 3-4 going off the board. It depends if someone wants Cedric Gray over him, they may get him. But I think Wilson, he's definitely behind Cooper and Colson, and then you're going Peyton Wilson as that linebacker. If you count Dallas Turner as a linebacker too, then he's definitely 4-5. But that's depending on your league and what you have him as. So.
Yeah, and then depending on the sacks, defensive ends are always a premium. So Latu, getting drafted by the Colts. Obviously, whenever you're the first defensive player off the board in the NFL draft, that helps you. I've seen him be the number one guy off the board in IDP leagues, depending on the scoring. Obviously, linebacker is one where certain leagues, everybody's like, they got to load up a linebacker, especially if you're in a league that starts 3 linebackers, but only 2 DNs. You might want that extra linebacker, but he's right in the mix. Kind of where are you seeing the difference between Latu, Dallas Turner for the Vikings, and Jared Verse for the Rams?
It really depends, because Turner. I think what the Vikings did with Turner is they did what the Texans did last year in Stroud and Anderson. They got their quarterback, and then they got their defensive guy, which is a beautiful chess play there. So I think Turner does go. Latu, I know people like him. I know people are scared about his injuries in the past as well. Versus an interesting one though, because he's actually sliding where I see Turner and Latu go in the mid to late seconds in some rounds, where Verse. I mean, people are, you'll go after maybe Cooper or even after Colson before you go after Verse for whatever reason. But he landed in a prime spot. And, Fiske, who's with him too, is at Florida State, is also there. So he's with a guy that really already has a chemistry with on how to work with each other when it comes down to those trenches, which is very exciting. That's something you love to see, because it makes the transition easier to that pro level. Right, you have someone that you fought with before, and now you can understand the game together as well and grow together. So he's the one that's getting drafted last, Jared Verse. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of those 3 the top guy, because of the smooth transition going to the pros and being on the defensive rate team that just lost their leader on the defense in Aaron Donald, right? So this will be an exciting season for him, and I really think he is the most underrated at this time for those 3.
Yeah, I've actually seen just recently, like the last couple days, people coming around to Jared Verse. I've seen some people being like, "Man, I wouldn't hate taking him over those 2 guys, just because they like the spot with the Rams. They think he's going to get a ton of opportunity. They think he's going to get a ton of snap share,
Right.
and you're like me. You play a lot of fantasy football with guys that are huge college fans.
Right.
I'm friends with a lot of FSU fans,
Yeah.
and they're like, "I gotta get Verse."
Yeah.
Like they're trading up, they're making sure they get Verse. They don't want anybody stealing from them.
Right.
And I have no problem if you like Verse that much, take him over those other 2 guys. I think all 3 of those guys are studs. So it just really depends on kind of what you think about them. The one guy that's kind of in that top mix for a DN, it seems like he's just slightly behind for me, is Chop Robinson. The Miami landing spot, they've got a lot of guys. It feels like it's kind of a crowded room. Chop's a guy that everybody's like, obviously athletic, off the charts. But he's a guy that just never really put up big stats at Penn State. Kind of, what do you think about Chop? Is he a guy you're going to take if he falls to you, or do you like him enough where you're like, I'm going to kind of maybe go out and reach for him? Because to me, right now, I'm seeing him. He's in that Peyton Wilson, like late third, all the way to late fourth for me in most IDP leagues.
Right. Sorry, let me get my seat up. Yeah, no. So I was lower on Chop in consensus. I know a lot of people. Some had him in the top three. When it came to your edge rushers, top five for sure. And I think I had him like maybe 9 or 10. So I was definitely lower on him. He seems slower. I know a lot of people say he's speed. He seems slower to me than some of these other edge rushers as far as getting after the ball and getting behind the line of scrimmage. So I was never that big on him. Going to Miami is interesting because I know they just lost Wilkins, but you still have Jalen Phillips, who, if he's healthy, that's their guy too. So I'm not that big. I mean, I'm passing on him. I'll let someone else get him. I'd rather get someone else at cost. Like I said, Fiske, I think Fiske can have a good year, but that's a D tackle, and that's something, if you go into deeper leagues, that can become relevant. But yeah, at this time, I just pass on him, and I go somewhere else.
I'm with you on that. I don't have any chop. He's just
Yeah.
a guy I don't totally believe in. If he just fell and fell and fell in a league, I could see myself taking him, but he hasn't.
Yeah.
So there's just other guys I like better. I'd rather, spend my draft capital on. Let's talk about a couple of the higher end safeties.
Mhm.
Now we know how it is in the IDP community. You have leagues where people take safeties and DBs, and you have
Mhm.
leagues where people are like, I don't care about them. I take them the very last thing ever. Like I
Right.
never draft DBs. I only want linebackers and DNs. So what do you think about these guys? Let's start off. Was my original safety one for this draft. I still like him. There's a couple other guys that have closed the gap for me. But what do you think about Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota now going to the Giants? It looks like a prime spot for him. Xavier McKinney gone to the Packers. It looks like he could just step right into that starting role where McKinney was.
Yeah, they still had Pinnock there, and that's good. But Pinnock wasn't really their tackler, right? I think Nubin will come out and be. And you hit, people either take DBs or they don't. Safeties are different though. In today's game, you have a lot of safeties that rack up a lot of tackles. You can name Jesse Bates, Brian Branch did really good, last season as well. Petrie has done good. You have Tyrann Mathieu in the past. So you have, safeties that can get some tackles. And I think Nubin's gonna fit that category because they're going to be able to use him all around. They're going to be able to line him up, in the box. They're going to be able to line him up in the slot to play nickel, to come on blitz, to play back into coverage. All these different areas they could use him. That's how versatile he is. So I actually enjoy him, and the Giants is actually a really good spot because I think they're trying to reshape the identity of their defense. They kind of been, I'd say, the laughing stock more so of the NFC East for the past couple of years. So they want to reshape that to become more of a physical, hard-hitting defense. They got O'Kirky last year, and now they have, Tyler Nubin there as well. So I think we're slowly getting something of that nature where it's like, okay, this is going to be a hard-hitting defense that you're going to have a lot of players wrap up some tackles. So I enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm on Newman because I just think the Giants are going to be very good.
Mhm.
I think they're going to be on defense a lot. I think teams are going to be running the ball against them.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have to make a lot of tackles. I really do.
Mhm.
And anytime you can get a rookie that immediately is going to step in and start, I think you got to take a look at that. He's a guy value wise. I don't know where you've seen him in your IDP drafts. He's all over the place in
Mhm.
my drafts. I've seen him as early as the beginning of the fourth. And I've seen him go all the way to the seventh round and go undrafted.
Yeah.
So if that tells you anything, a guy that was my number one
Mhm.
safety in how people value in different leagues, I've seen him everywhere. It's been kind of wild. Where have you kind of seen it? You seen the same kind of
So
thing with him just being on everywhere in
yeah.
drafts or where?
The only time he's undrafted is, let's say, like a 5-round IDP league, which I think I'm in
Mhm.
one or two of those. So those are lit. Like a lot of my IDP leagues, the drafts are at least 8 to 10 rounds. So the spare ones I have 5 where he went undrafted. But the earliest I've seen him, I saw him go 311. And the latest I saw him well, one undrafted in that 5-round league, but then two, I think it was like 607. He was one of the top safeties off the board in that early one, though, and he kind of fluctuated as being one of the number one safeties off the board as well. So,
Yeah, I think I think the earliest I saw him go was like 4-1 in a
mhm.
league, and then I got him in a 10-team league where no one was taking
Yeah.
DBs. I got him at the 7-8, and we do 7 rounds. I got him in the 7-8 of
Nice.
a 10-team league.
Nice.
So, like you see, it kind of goes all over the place. There was a couple other guys out there I liked, and I was like, I can't not take my number one safety in an
Yeah.
IDP draft. I had to take him. So even though I'm loaded at safety in that league, I was like, I'm going to take him anyway. Here's a guy that's moving up my board, and I love the landing spot. It feels like it's perfect, and that's Cole Bishop going to the Buffalo Bills. Second round draft capital. The Bills had to make all kinds of moves on defense. They had a ton of money they had to get rid of. They moved on from Poyer. They moved on from Hyde. They moved on from White. And he looks like he's a guy that's going to possibly move in there and immediately start at safety for them and probably play the box safety, a guy that had a great tackle rate, 10.9%. What do you think about Cole Bishop?
Man, Cole Bishop, I was talking about him all last year. With Utah, he was the heart and soul of that defense. You had Jonah Ellis on there as well, who went to the Broncos. But Cole Bishop, man, he's just an all-around hard-hitting type of safety. Your old school, gritty, get in your face type of safety, but also has some good hands and some playmaking abilities. Going to Buffalo with what they did on defense, beautiful spot. He's going to go in there day one, be a starter. He's going to be potentially the highest scoring rookie defensive back that we have this year because of what he can do. And as you mentioned, just him playing all over the field, they're going to use that. That's what Buffalo wants, to get in your face. And Cole Bishop does that, but he can also drop back into coverage when you need him to.
Yeah, I feel like, if you've had Jordan Poyer on your team the last couple of years, he's taken Jordan Poyer's spot. He is in that spot. And that was a top end IDP scoring spot. I love it. I literally was holding my breath for almost 2 rounds the last draft just before we got on the show.
Right.
I traded up to 512, only a 5-round IDP draft in a salary cap league. I traded a 4th rounder next year to get the 512, the last pick of the draft, because Cole Bishop was still out there. Yeah. I was like, I got to get him. And I needed safety help. I loved it, and I almost took him at the 4-2, which I traded up for in that league to get a pick there. So, I was looking at I almost took him there. And then I traded up and got another pick at the beginning of the 5th round and almost took him there. And I just kind of kept waiting. I kept waiting because no one was really going DB. And I was like, man, maybe I can get him late. And I was just hoping nobody was going to take him. And he got to me at 512. I was like, bam, I loved it.
And that's where it becomes important to know their positions, not just their title in the sense. So don't just look at them as defensive back. Like I said, safeties, you have some safeties that rack up 100 plus tackles. And in every IDP league, maybe tackles aren't the most important, but tackles are very important because that's how they get points, right? So Cole Bishop is the guy that's going to get tackles. Remnants to, again, Brian Branch had a great year last year. You have Jesse Bates, who consistently gets over 100 tackles. These type of guys will get you some good points, and Cole Bishop will fit in that mold too.
So another guy that I've seen all over the place. I've seen him be the number 1 DB off the board. I've seen him go late. The value just seems crazy for him, and that's Cooper DeJean. He just for the Eagles, old Iowa cornerback. Everybody's like, is he going to play corner? Is he going to play safety? Where is he going to be? The new rules with special teams, if you're in a league that has kick and punt return yards, he was a spectacular kick and punt returner in college. He's a guy I've seen people way overdrafting, and I like him, but way overdrafting him. And then I've seen him drop in a few leagues and go about where I think he would be. What have you seen from people on him? He's a guy I like right now. It's kind of looking like he's going to play that slot corner. If he plays that slot corner, I like him a whole lot more for the Eagles as opposed to if he plays outside. Kind of what are you seeing on him?
He's a player where, again, they'll know your league. Some players aren't even drafting him till end the final round, just because he's the cornerback. But he's also somewhere where it's very possible that he becomes a shutdown guy just because of his ball playing skills. What he can do with he's guarding the guy down the field, viewing where the ball's at, and things like that. So it's very possible that he's one of your shutdown corners. At that point, he becomes irrelevant. Great real life player, but irrelevant for fantasy. So when it comes to a player like that, where like I don't think the tackles will necessarily follow, just because I think some quarterbacks may avoid him because of how he's shadowing and covering over those wide receivers. I'm out on him personally.
Yeah, my question for him is, I feel like he's a guy that could end up being a pretty impactful rookie, and
Mhm.
then not anymore after that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because I feel like he's a guy, because of the way the roster construction works with the Eagles. This rookie year, people might go after him just because he's a rookie and he's playing the slot corner. You got Quinyon Mitchell on the other side, their first round pick. He's a shutdown corner. You got Darius Slay on the other side. He's a
Mhm.
shutdown corner. Does he end up scoring solid fantasy points just because he's the guy everybody goes after this
Right,
first year? And there's a chance they move on from Slay eventually and he moves out to the outside, and then all of a sudden he's fantasy irrelevant.
right,
And we've seen the same thing for everyone taking him for special teams purposes. I love that. To me, that's a cheat code when you get a
right,
DB that kicks and punt returns. The problem is, once those guys get really good,
mhm,
they stop letting him play special teams,
right,
i.e., Tyreek Hill, Adoree Jackson. Adoree
right,
Jackson won me multiple leagues his rookie year because
right,
he was kicking, punt returning, and he was scoring me a ton of points
right.
as a DB. But you know what? He got paid, and they stopped playing him on special teams.
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill got paid, stopped playing on special teams. That's where I'm worried about Cooper DeJean, is that you're gonna get him for that like brief moment, and he's gonna really kill for you for a second, and then all of
right,
a sudden, a year or two down the road, you're gonna be like, oh, he's a shutdown corner that doesn't score me any points. He's like 100th
right,
on the list because he's shutting everyone down, like you said. So
right.
that, to me, I'm not telling people not to take him, but that's my worry. I'd be very careful about drafting him too high. That's what ends up happening with him,
For
is that
sure.
he becomes that guy.
For sure. No, 100%. And that makes perfect sense. And that's a prime example of you gotta know when to hold them and when to fold them, right? You gotta know when to get out when you can. And if he does have that boom, it might be that opportunity to go after a safety that had some tackles, but maybe he didn't have the interception. So Cooper DeJean has more points than him because he had more interceptions. Go after the guy that gets the tackles.
Let's talk about some of our favorite IDP values. Some of the guys I think are falling in drafts, and depending on what league you're playing in, could be really nice. My number one guy, and I talked about this all pre-draft, was DeMarcus Robinson, Missouri defensive end. I said the whole draft, he felt like a prime 3-4 DN for me. A
Mhm.
guy that played inside most of his time in college, moved to the outside last year, and just was really disruptive at
Mhm.
Missouri. And I was like, man, this guy reminds me of like a Cam Hayward type, a guy that could be the 3-4 inside guy, but still brings pass rush pressure and
Right.
makes tackles. And I'm like, if you're in a my fantasy league where you have a defensive tackle starter, I'm like, this guy feels like a cheat code for me. I'm loving him. In sleeper, I'm down on him a little bit because all the D linemen, D ends, everybody's all together. But
Right.
in this, if I can get DeMarcus Robinson, like I told you, I just got. Uh, sorry, I'm blanking on. I just got Bishop at
Yeah.
512. I traded in to get DeMarcus Robinson at the beginning of the round in the 5th round because I was like, hey, this guy's great in a defensive tackle position. So I got DeMarcus Robinson early. What do you think about him? He's a guy I feel like is going to get you really nice points because he really is that kind of true defensive end playing on the interior, giving you defensive tackle. And we know how
Yeah.
hard it is to score a D tackle.
Yeah, I mean, luckily he's in the NFC West, so he'll see a lot of running plays. So maybe that's where he gets a bunch of tackles and a bunch of opportunity. Uh, I liked him pre-draft process. I just need to see what I feel like the Arizona defense is going to set up to look like. I don't know how good they're going to be, and if that's the case, is he become a benefactor or just a bad defensive line unit all around? And that way, they're not really running through and they're running elsewhere because it's more clearer for them as a running back. So personally, I'm not necessarily touching them at this time. When it comes to guys that play inside and on the outside, like the versatility, but they might play inside first, that's hard to gauge because you want them to get tackles, but a lot of times they may not. You may have the edge comes around because they're the bigger bodies inside, so you have more double teams focused on them. If I'm going after a defensive tackle personally, I think I'm going with my guy Big Texas out in Tennessee, Tavondre Sweat. I think that's someone that could be a run clogger and just someone where it's going to completely shut down the inside. But again, that can hurt because he's so big in the inside. Why are you going to run up the middle? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, he's going to clog it up and just make it difficult for your running back. So teams in the NFL pay attention to that, and that can affect what he can bring for your fantasy teams. A great example of a great real life player, but for fantasy, I'm not on.
Yeah, so Sweat is a guy that I feel like is a lot like Jordan Davis, a
Mhm.
guy that's just so good, so athletic, so big, but he's not going to put. There's chances that he's not going to put up great fantasy stats because he's going to get double teamed
Right,
every freaking play. Because if you don't double team him, he's going to ruin you.
right.
And that's where I'm worried about him. That's why I'm hoping Robinson, just because he is in the 3-4, but he's going to be on the outside. I'm hoping that helps him. But I
Mhm.
do like Sweat there. We mentioned him earlier. I've seen him go all over the place because it seems like guys that are really in the know like him. But if you're in a league with guys haven't really studied the draft, Cedric Gray is a guy that's kind of fallen through the gaps. He either goes
Right.
early because somebody really likes him and they know him, or he just falls through the gaps and he just goes farther and farther down. I really like the opportunity in Tennessee. I don't like what's in front of him.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think he gets a shot either sometime beginning of this year or maybe middle of the year?
Then I think he will be their guy there. Am I drafting him? No. Um, that's not because of what he's gonna do. I think he's gonna be a great fantasy. This is my fandom getting in my way. I'm a Duke fan, and because he went to North Carolina, I'm like, I can't, man. I actually just took Devontae Walker in like the fourth round, and I was like, man, that value is just too good where he's at right now. And it made me sick. Like, I was looking at the board, I'm like, there's really nobody else. This is just the best value I can get for him. Try to get him, trade him later on. If Cedric's grade there, like if he's in the sixth, seventh round, I'll pick him up, but he's not falling that late. And he's there in some picks where I'm like, God, he would be a great pick here. But because I'm a Duke fan, I'm just like, can't do it, man. Can't do it. I'm gonna let this next person get him. So, but no, I with not my personal opinion. What you should do is be drafting him because he's gonna be a stud. I think he could one day be the Mike linebacker as far as the green dot guy for them as well. And he's just gonna be a tackle machine for them. He was at North Carolina. He's gonna be that in Tennessee. So when he's there in your fourth rounds, I would take him as early as fourth. You're pushing it into the third if you really wanted to, but if it's a high scoring IDP league, I definitely get it because I think he's gonna be one of the top rookie linebackers in this year's class.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's in the fourth, some of the fifths. Like I said, my one league I just went in, it was between him and Bishop
Mhm.
at 512. He went undrafted in that league. I took Bishop because I really needed safety, and I'd already taken Colson at two
Mhm.
six. So I was like, I'm gonna go after Gray in the free agent auction
Right.
that happens in a couple weeks. But I was like, I needed Bishop more, but he's a guy I'm definitely got my eye on. I like him a lot. Another guy, let's talk about one more guy that's kind of a sneaky player. Kamren Kinchens went to the
Mhm.
Rams. Uh, I've seen people pre-draft really high on him. I saw him as high as ranked as number one or number two in
Mhm.
safeties. I saw other people really down on him. They're like, I like him okay, but I don't love his profile. He goes to a Rams team that the secondary hasn't been great the last couple of years.
Right.
Do you think he gets a shot there sooner rather than later?
I think sooner rather than later, and that's why I'm drafting him. I Will he be the starter day one? He can be, will he be? I don't know. I think they'll go with their veterans there that they have right now, but I think he will be a starter by the end of the season. He's just gonna get into that rotation, and they're not gonna turn back from him. So I'm drafting him now. I'm getting him in the 5th round. Some leagues 6th or 7th. Again, just depends where the value's at. But I mean, he is dropping, and I'm just trying to figure out why. Because he was a great player in college. He's someone that, again, hard hitting, could make those tackles. Big body guy, can track the ball well. He has great pursuit when he's going after them. He's someone else that can get multiple tackles for your team and just be a top defender week in, week out. And you think about the Rams, they don't have much just all around. Byron Young did pretty good for them at linebacker all around. They got a whole new defensive line unit pretty much. And now you have a guy like Kamren Kinchens. Honestly, he can go in there and he can end up being the leader of the defense, which will impact him to see the field more and just be one of their playmakers on the field.
Yeah, so what I've been looking at and what I think people are down on him is they go and look at the starting lineup for the Rams and they're like, oh, he plays Cam Curl's position. He's a backup to Cam Curl. I don't think he is, because a lot of people don't realize the Rams play a lot of one linebacker. Lot of one linebacker. I think Cam Curl, I think they end up playing a lot of 3 safety. I think Cam Curl plays more closer to the line, and I think Kinchens is in there a lot. I really do. Even if he's not playing a ton right off the bat, I think he's going to be in the mix. And I think that's, to me, why he's falling, is a lot of people are looking at that and going like, oh, he's not going to be the starter because they've already got Cam Curl. They got Russ Yeast, and I'm not a big Russ Yeast guy. I mean, 7th-round pick 2 years ago, whatever. I think Kinchens gets in there and ends up playing quite a bit. Wherever they want to use him, where they need him, I think he plays. I think you're right. I think he's a steal right now. I think people are kind of forgetting about him.
Yeah, I think Yeast is there. And to be honest, I like Curl, but I mean, Kinchens could beat out Curl too. I mean, I think he's
better.
Yeah, he's just all around. I think he's a lot better. Kim Curl was good, but also the Commanders let him walk, right? So there's they need someone in that backfield, in that secondary, and Kinchens could be the guy. Curl's great as far as, like, I think he can definitely be more of your free roaming safety, but you want that strong safety. I think Kinchens could be that guy.
I agree. Let's talk about, as we're getting kind of near the last segment of the show, let's talk about some guys that you think are probably not going to contribute this year at all, fantasy-wise. There's always those guys, the rookies, they got to sit a year, they got to kind of figure it out, and then bam, year 2, they step into that lineup and they hit. Who are some of the guys you're looking at going, hey, late in drafts or even waiver wire? Guys, I don't know how many people have gone. I had 2 of my IDP leagues, our first waiver wire after the rookie draft, went through tonight. And so I was looking at a lot of those rookies that didn't get drafted and going, hey, who's a guy I can get, stash on my taxi squad, and just hold for like a year and see if they can hit? Who are you kind of eyeing, like late drafts or waiver wire first runs, that you don't think is going to make an impact immediately, but you like the talent and you think long-term they can do something?
I mean, one, DeJean Newton, you had to talk about him. He was getting a lot of comparisons, just being a great all-around pass rusher. He just went to a place that's very deep as far as that position. You have Donald Payne, and then John Allen's even there, and there's another guy that I'm trying to blank on for the Commanders, but they have a bunch of D tackles there, and Newton unfortunately is that guy, so he may take a year or two. I also like Ketan Oladapu out at Oregon, or excuse me, he went to Oregon State, but he was with Green Bay. Someone that's a defensive back there as well, where I think he has what it takes to go pro, to be a solid pro, but I don't think he necessarily gets that start right now. He is nursing a toe injury anyways, so it's going to be more later in the season or maybe year 2 when he actually comes out and does some good things. And then Austin Booker, I think that's a great Bears player as well. But again, somewhere where I don't know how early he sees the field. There's some good competition there. They have Sweat there, so he's someone that can be an impactful player coming down the line, but I don't know if we're talking about him in year 1 of fantasy.
Yeah, I got to agree. Johnny Newton out of Illinois went to the Commanders, just rough landing spot. You just don't see the playing time for him. He's a
Right.
guy. He was my number one defensive tackle coming into the draft.
Mm.
I loved him. I love his pass rush ability, but he's falling big
Right.
time in drafts because people just don't see where he'll start. So now's the time to take advantage. Get him late, stash
Mhm.
him, and then one of these guys, as soon as they move off, either Allen or Payne, he's going to get in there. But it's going to take some time, and I can see him not producing at all this
Mhm.
first year. So I agree with you there. Austin Booker's another one I'm big on. I think he's a guy, if he would have went back to school, I think he had late first, early second round potential. He decided
Mhm.
to come out early, fell in the draft. The Bears traded up to get him. So they were like stoked when they saw him still on there. They got him. He's a guy, again, I think you're probably not going to get a lot out of this year, but I'm buying talent. And I
Mhm.
think he's got the talent. I think he's a guy that can make a big impact next year. So he's a guy that, I mean, I'm very rarely seeing drafted. He's
Mhm.
mostly a free agent waiver wire pickup. So he's a guy, if I have the room on my roster, either a really deep roster or taxi squad is pretty big, he's a guy I'm grabbing and putting on there as well. So I love those two picks. Two other guys I really like. A guy that was my number two safety coming in that kind of fell in the draft. Kind of hurt me a little bit. I was hoping he went a little
Mhm.
higher, but Jaden Hicks out of Washington State, I loved him pre-draft. He ended up going to the Chiefs. They've kind of changed that secondary a little bit. I don't know how much he sees playing time early, but
Mhm.
he's a guy I still love the ability. I still
Right.
think he's going to get a shot there. Just because he went later in drafts, I'm not seeing him in a lot of leagues. A lot of people are passing on him. He's falling
Mhm.
deep. He's the very first guy I'm taking off waivers if he's out there. He's a stash for me. I think he's a guy that maybe gets a year in the NFL and then really proves himself. Maybe he gets in at the end of the year here for the Chiefs, but he's a guy I just really like. I really like Hicks. I know you're a West Coast guy up there in Washington. What do you think about Hicks?
Yeah, Hicks is great too. The Chiefs are interesting because every year too. I mean, they have your studs, you have your Nick Bolton stuff like that. But I feel like there's always a group of players on the Chiefs defense that they don't do anything at the beginning of the season, and then the second half of the season they just go out for a boom. So that could be Hicks. As you mentioned, that playing time, will we see it early? Probably not. But I think he's someone that they invested in to be like, okay, we're gonna see what you got, and if he can at least get a spot on the 53-man roster, then that's something huge, and it does raise some interest in there. He is going undrafted in a lot of leagues that I'm in, so depending on where you're at, like I'm not necessarily taking him over some of the other safeties we talked about, because I can't let him slide. I think he can be on waivers. And then if you have a taxi spot, sure, go ahead and put it. But if not, I think you're just waiting to see if one of your guys get injured and you need to pick somebody up.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that I don't know if people are going to be running to pick him up. So you could
Mhm.
probably wait if you needed to during the season, see if he hits for a little while, or you get a bunch of injuries and you have open spots on your roster, pick him up later in the year. But he's
Right.
definitely a guy I'm keeping an eye out on. A guy I really like that I just don't see any way he plays this year.
Uh-huh.
But what the Packers are doing
Uh-huh.
is Tyron Hooper for the linebacker out of Missouri, transfers from Florida. He went in the third round. Now, if you're the Packers, you just took Edgerin Cooper, the number one linebacker in the second round. Turn around, you took Hooper in the third round. I think he was the fourth or fifth linebacker off the board. So you took two of the top guys. Uh, I feel like this just means they're going to eventually move on from Quay Walker. They let Devontae Campbell go. He's gone. I think Cooper steps in with Walker right away. I think there's a chance that Hooper is in their plans for the future going to the third round. I just don't see him this year. So he's a guy that I'm not drafting, but I'm holding out for. If I have a spot, I'm taking on the waivers. But he's also a guy you probably don't need to grab because I don't see a lot of playing time, but he's a guy I would look at late in the season.
Yeah.
Maybe I pick him up just sneakily before next year just starts. I just don't see you take a guy that high in the third round unless you're pretty interested in him. But it does seem I just don't see how he plays this year. What do you think?
Yeah, low. I mean, you hit everything right on the money. I think he has an opportunity to because they invested third round day two capital on him, right? So they're definitely going to see him a little bit. I feel, or at least having get on the field a little bit. He's going in the drafts. He's going in your fifth or sixth for me in IDP leagues. He's definitely one of your top 6, 7 linebackers, I think, off the board. So he's definitely one of those guys, especially in tackle heavy ones. People want to get on him and try to use it for them. He's staying on taxi teams, but a lot of people are going after him.
Yeah, he's been kind of getting ignored in a lot of my DB drafts, and I think it's just people looked at it and are like, "Where's he going to play?" Like they got Quay
Right.
Walker, they took the number one linebacker,
Right.
so and then they got McDuffie still there. So I had a couple leagues people jumped on him in the fourth
Mhm.
round, and I had other leagues that nobody was even looking at him. So he's a guy I'm kind of looking at and grabbing late. Final segment here. Always hate to talk trash about guys. Don't like to do it. But who are some of the guys you're out on? Like some guys you're just like, I'm not taking him. I don't care how far he falls. I got one in my mind that I've looked at too much data, too much stuff that I'm out on. Is there anybody that you just are like, I'm just not doing?
I mean, right now, man, it was someone I was higher on in pre-draft process. That Nathaniel Watson out in he went to Mississippi State and then he's out in Cleveland. They just took 6th round capital out of him. Cleveland has a pretty good linebacking core in itself, so he don't know how much playing time he is going to get. He did lead his conference in tackles this past season. I think in the last 3 games, he had like 50 total tackles in the final 3 games alone. Some outrageous number. It might have been even higher than that, but out of Mississippi State. So I was definitely higher on him because he has a knack for getting after the ball and at least getting involved in the tackle, which is huge. Assisted tackles, you get half a point, right? So that's big. But because of where he's at in Cleveland, in the 6th round, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get at that level. So right now I'm out on him, but I'm keeping my eyes open because he's going undrafted. But definitely be aware of what's going on in that Cleveland linebacker room because if he does get that shot, I'm all in. But right now I'm out on him.
Yeah, I'm going to go with another linebacker that got pretty high draft capital. I'm kind of opposite here. He got high draft capital, and I'm just a little shocked that he did. And that's Marist Liufau from the Notre Dame linebacker.
Mhm.
Uh, I started looking into him because I'm like, oh, is this a guy I should start looking for in drafts? Like, I wasn't big on him in the pre-draft process at all. I didn't have
Mhm.
him in my top 10 linebackers, and he went pretty high. I think it was a second round pick, if I'm correct, by the
Mhm.
Cowboys. And I was just like looking at him, like, man, this guy got drafted pretty high. Let me look at him. I started looking into him, and the metrics are not great. They just
Yeah.
aren't. The tackle numbers were terrible for him. He had a tackle rate of 7.8%, which is lower than most defensive backs, and his missed tackle rate was 18.4%. So an
Mhm.
18% missed tackle rate and a 7.8 tackle rate for a middle linebacker.
Mhm.
You don't like those. I've seen a couple other guys talk about him. Just more I've looked into him. He is not a great tackler. He does not attack the ball very well. He doesn't attack the line very well. He's a guy that I just after looking into it deeper and deeper, the draft capital makes me want to take him, but then
Mhm.
everything else is screaming me like, don't take this guy. He's gonna be a bust. He's not gonna play. He's gonna get on the team, and they're gonna look at him and be like, we
Right.
screwed up, and we're gonna play the other guys instead. So I just do not see a clear path to him playing unless something completely changes or a ton of injuries happen. And even if the injuries happen and he does play, I'm nervous that he's actually going to be able to perform and
Mhm.
actually get you any IDP points. So he's a
Right.
guy I'm just out on. I've had a couple people ask me about him lately, and just the more I dug into him, the more I was just like, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
There's so many other guys I'd rather have. And usually I can't ignore that high draft capital, but in this
Yeah.
circumstance, I am.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think it'll depend on what happens with Michael Parsons. If he's going to continue to be their guy. There's just a lot of rumors going on in Dallas potentially moving on after this year. So he might not be the guy this year, but Liufau definitely could be one of their top guys going into next year. So if you can stash him, I would. But yeah, you mentioned, is he going to get that playing time now? We don't know. Again, with Parsons there, Parsons eating up most of that work in that linebacking core anyway. So, it might be wise to pass on Liufau.
I think that's about ready going to do it for us. SC, man.
Okay.
Great to have you on the show. It's been a while since we got to talk. Tell everybody where they can find all your stuff because I know you're in a bunch of new places doing a ton of new things these days.
Yeah, man. So the Fantasy Football Universe, go check out our site. Follow us at the FF Universe on X. Just dropping, rookie profiles. We have shows going up each and every single day. A lot of exciting stuff to come within the Fantasy Football Universe. So give us a look. I'm doing some things with league winners for the SEC. Got my SEC article predicting my top 6 teams in the SEC this coming season. And then with the CFB Nation, I got our top 4, the consensus CFB Nation top 4 defensive edge rushers coming out as well. So check out with that article when that drops also. And then, yeah, you can follow me at the PPR show on X. Try to do my IDP thing and my Devi thing when it comes to the space, but I'm always down to talk some good ball.
I appreciate you coming on. You can find me at JT Orange on the X or Twitter. DLF, you can find all my IDP rankings. I just updated my rookie rankings today. Actually, I'm going to get in this week and update my top 150. I'll get all kinds of stuff on there. Also, make sure you jump on Fantasy and Frames, all kinds of new articles coming up daily. We just dropped a show on the Scott Fishbowl scoring, so make sure to check out that and get in there and be like, because it changes every year. So we've got all kinds of shows coming up. So make sure you jump on, subscribe to the channel, and hit those notifications so you know when we come on, because we always bring a bunch of shows to you every Wednesday night. SC, thanks so much for joining us. We will check you guys later. Thank you.